if I told you that the most famous individual football player award was named for a guy from Western Pennsylvania? Well, indeed it is. In this episode, we bring you something special from our Western Pennsylvania football history profile of the week. John Heisman, yes, the coach that college football's most prestigious trophy is named after, is our subject in this edition, and it's coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pigpen, your portal to positive football history. And it is the end of the week. It's Saturday, and we're going to talk, as we do the last few weeks, and we're going to continue to do, about football history from my neck of the woods, Western Pennsylvania, and some of the major contributions that the area has made to the game of football. You're going to be surprised with some of these that we do each week. And today might be especially surprising to you because I'm going to tell you about the biography of Coach John Heisman, one of the great contributors and innovators of the game of football from its earliest eras, when it was a mere game combination of soccer and rugby, more so than it was football. You know, he is a contemporary of Walter Camp and Amos Alonzo Stagg. They coached at the same time, and they had interactions together, as we're going to talk about here. Now, a lot of this information I'm going to give to you comes from a couple great sources. Heisman.com, we have the link in our website on this John Heisman article. The trophy, the Heisman Trophy, is named after John Heisman. It just tells you what an important subject in football history he is. Also, from his hometown paper of the Titusville Herald, had a great article on him as well. We're going to get some information from there, and from some other sources around the web, and some great books that we have the opportunity to read. So hopefully we do you some justice and let you learn a little bit more about a great Western Pennsylvanian, John Heisman. He initially was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I know that's not Western Pennsylvania. It's west of Western Pennsylvania. But he was born October 23rd, 1869, and his God-given name was John William Heisman. Now, the Titusville Herald shares that John Heisman's family name was originally von Bogart, not Heisman. Now, Michael von Bogart, John's father, was the son of a French nobleman, and Michael chose to marry a peasant girl, Sarah Ann Lair Heisman, and was subsequently disowned by Baron von Bogart, the family patriarch. In this romantic story, the young man, Michael, gave up everything, and the marriage took place, with him marrying Sarah Ann. And with this, the family turning their back upon him, Michael von Bogart relinquished his family name and adopted his wife's family name of Heisman. Well, there was so much dissension and trouble that he decided with his wife to emigrate into the United States soon thereafter, and the couple settled in Cleveland, Ohio, where Michael Heisman now worked as a cooper, or otherwise known as a barrel maker, making the wooden barrels. Now, John William Heisman, the third son of Michael and Sarah Heisman, shortly after John's birth, the Heismans moved to Titusville, Pennsylvania, where Edwin Drake's oil well created the oil boom about a decade or so earlier. And there was need for barrel manufacture, so Michael Heisman opened up a cooper shop which supplied packaging to the nearby oil refineries there around Titusville, Oil City area. Now, Titusville, just to put it on a map, I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's probably about 40 miles sort of southeast of Erie. If you can picture the little smokestack on the state of Pennsylvania, the sort of the western or eastern side of that smokestack, if you go straight down probably 40-50 miles, that's where Titusville is located, down in that area. So it's not too far from where I am right now. And I've done plenty of games down there, worked a lot of games. I've gone down and watched games, played games down in Titusville. And great place, great little area, and very much set up because of the great oil boom of Drake's Follies and the oil that he discovered there in like 1859. Now, John Heisman attended a couple of Titusville elementary schools, and he was remembering for having enjoyed bobsled riding and frolicking around the town streets with the other youngsters, and not getting in much trouble, but just having a good time as boys will be boys. He was also known to play in Oil Creek and Church Run, two of the main little waterways there go through Titusville. And the Titusville High School's first football team was founded in 1884, and John Heisman became involved with that game, this time according to a piece that was written almost 100 years later after the event. That Titusville Herald article says, quote, "After 3 local boys returned from college and showed high school players a more civilized version of the game than they were accustomed to playing, Heisman bought a rule book for 10 cents and retired to seclusion. He labored over such puzzling terminology as touchdown, safety, and offside." The quote goes on to say, Heisman later reported the high school team had little use for the fuzz buzz of the official rules. Instead, a 15-man team had the time of their lives assaulting a round black rubber ball up and down expansive fields. The ball belonged to whoever had strong or fleet enough to take it. End quote. Now, not much is known about that Titusville High School's football team from 1884 to 1886 in its formative years. And the only information existing on the school's football during the first 3 years are John Heisman's own written recollections and a brief 1885 Titusville Herald story. And the Herald mentioned that a high school team had been formed and one of its members was William Johnson. Now, the Herald speculates that this might be a misspelling of John Heisman, who often went by the name of William J. Heisman. It's easy to connect the dots. It could have been a written error in the paper there. The paper makes mistakes all the time. Now, Michael Heisman, his father, refused to watch his son John play football, calling it sort of a waste of time and even bestial. But little did he know that's where his son was really going to make his mark later on. Who would know that the game of football would make its mark there in the 1880s? Now, John Heisman's 1884 to 1886 recollections mentioned that the football fields of those years were 110 yards long instead of the standard 100 yards, long familiar to players and fans alike. That's still remembered in Canadian football, 110. But we know from the early 1890s, I believe, they had to shrink the field down to fit in those cement stadiums when they added the end zone lines. The end zones, adding 10 yards on each end of the field. So they had to shrink that down a little bit so they'd fit in those big concrete stadiums like Harvard Stadium and the Yale Bowl. Well, there was not any league play, nothing to say, till like 1902. So John Heisman didn't go play another local school or anything like that. Now, Heisman graduated from Titusville High School in 1887, and he ended up at the commencement exercises, got to say a very well-known oration called The Dramatist and a Sermonizer. And it was filled with dramatic emphasis and fire and a little bit of brimstone. And he showed how the masterpieces of Shakespeare depicted the ends of unchecked passion. And the paper write-up in it said that Mr. Heisman's effort was greeted with well-merited applause. So he must have been quite the orator and speaker, even at his high school graduation at the ceremonies there. That would prove to be some pretty good things later in life when he would talk to his teams and a little bit to the press. In 1887, at the age of 17, John left Titusville for Brown University, where he played a form of club football with his classmates. And after 2 years, in the fall of 1889, he ended up deciding to leave Brown University. He transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, or Penn as it's well known, to pursue a law degree. He was only 5'8", 158 pounds, kind of a smallish player to play on the powerful Penn teams of that era. But he did play on the varsity football team for 3 years, and he, believe it or not, that small size, he played center, tackle, and guard, sometimes end, but he was always a lineman. 5'8", 158 pounds. I don't even know if you could be the water boy on today's college football teams at 5'8", 158 pounds. Well, he had an eye injury at some point during his college career, and I don't think it was on the football field, but sometimes during college. So he had to sort of abandon his plans to get a law degree, and subsequently he decided to take a position at Oberlin University as the first head football coach there, and he compiled a perfect debut season, undefeated at Oberlin. Well, he ended up moving on from there, and he had a long coaching career, 35 years from that start. He ended up going to Bechtel University, which is now called the University of Akron, and then to Alabama Polytechnic Institute. Now, you may have never heard of that because it doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Auburn University. I know you've heard of that in the football circles. Also, he was at Clemson, University of Pennsylvania's alma mater, Washington and Jefferson, and Rice University. His most impressive coaching reign was with Georgia Tech, where he coached from 1904 to 1919. And they were called the Golden Tornadoes, the Rambling Wreck or the Yellow Jackets. That wasn't their moniker then. They were the Golden Tornadoes. And they were a scoring powerhouse with an astounding 33 straight wins at one point under Coach Heisman's reign. And he left Georgia Tech after the 1919 season to return as the head coach's alma mater, University of Pennsylvania again. After 3 years, they bought out his contract, and he spent 1 year at the Washington Jefferson before moving to Texas and Rice Institute. And his coaching career ultimately spanned more than 3 decades, like we said, 35 years. And in 1927, at the age of 62, John W. Heisman retired from coaching from the game he loved and developed. So, he had a great eye for knowing what to inspire his team and what to do, and some great innovations. Some of those are just unbelievable. He had one saying for the opening day of fall practice, and he would explain to the team, we told you he's a great orator, and he said, quote, "Football is an elongated spheroid, that is, an elongated sphere which the outer leathern casing is drawn tightly over a somewhat smaller rubber tubing. Better to have died as a small boy than to fumble this football." End quote. That's just some of the wisdom of John Heisman, bringing the point of don't drop that ball, because all it is just, this spheroid, and make sure you know what it is. Now, he had a lot of great friends and fellow contributors and people that just really respected him and really well known to football. Now, they included, Coach Robert Zupke, Bob Zupke of Illinois, University of Illinois, Fielding Yost of Michigan, and those point-a-minute teams that he had. Amos Alonzo Stagg at Chicago University, the grand old man of football. We've talked about quite a bit here. Dr. J.W. Wiltsey of Ohio State, DX Bible of Texas A&M, and even some great writers. Grantland Rice, the great sports writer who, had some very poetic lines that are well remembered, like the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame. He ended up naming them, and so many other great insights on the game. Well, that was a good friend of John W. Heisman as well. He also was friends with Bobby Jones, the great golfer from the PGA Tour, and some great, winning Augusta and things like that. Good friend of his, and also his one of his former teammates at Penn, who stayed very close with throughout his life, became the honorable mayor of Philadelphia, Harry A. Mackey. So some great company that he kept in there. Well, he also, when he was at Georgia Tech, he's remembered for something maybe he's not so wasn't so proud of, but something that he definitely manufactured because he was a little bit miffed. The most lopsided football game in the history of football. And when he was at Georgia Tech beat Cumberland College, who hails from Lebanon, Tennessee, by an outstanding and astounding score of 222-0 on October 7th, 1916. Now, that record stands and probably will never be broken as the highest score in a football game, the biggest point differential, and just about every other record you can imagine with 222 points. And according to the NCAA, that's sort of this little feud that Heisman found himself in, why he ran up the score so much, started a year earlier, because Heisman at that time was also the school's baseball coach. And the two schools, Georgia Tech and Cumberland, met on a baseball diamond in 1915, and Cumberland peppered the Georgia Tech ballers 22-0. Just humiliated them. Now Heisman, he was furious. He was fuming. He was very upset because he felt that Cumberland had stacked their team with professional ringers, some professional ball players coming in and taking on his fully amateur club of college students and just beating them 22-0 and embarrassing, and severely outclassing the group of true collegiate players. Now, Heisman, he had a little bit of revenge in mind, and he had his eye on some redemption because he knew that his football team had Cumberland College on their schedule for the upcoming 1916 season. The plot thickened, though, when Cumberland decided to drop its football program completely. Maybe they had a hint that Georgia Tech was planning and Heisman were planning something a little special for Cumberland to come on in and play. Well, this schedule commitment prior to the discontinuation of the football team made Cumberland forced to play the October 7th game or face a steep fine of, at the time, $3,000 payable to Georgia Tech for the breach of contract for the game. And Heisman said that he was going to, in fact, pursue that breach of contract and go after the $3,000. It was gigantic money for that amount of time. While the school officials charged with the team's student manager with the task of assembling a team to face Georgia Tech. And this poor guy, he had to fill out his roster with a bunch of his fraternity brothers who felt it obligatory to help one of their own out of the jam. Besides, it sounded like fun, especially because they would leave Lebanon, Tennessee, and travel down to Georgia Tech. And John Heisman vowed to give that Cumberland team $500 of travel expenses, which equates in today's money to about $11,500. They could have some good fun, have a little vacation, and play a little football. Well, you know what the results were. It was just a one-sided onslaught, and a lot of records were made in that game. And that was the last game that Cumberland College ever fielded a football team on, and because of that embarrassment. So football program was well defunct after that shellacking. Now, when John retired from coaching at the age of 60 with a winning national championship at Georgia Tech in 1917, and he retired with victories, 185 of them, 68 losses and 19 ties there in 1927. Some of his contributions include the center snap or the hike, quarterback's vocal signals, interference on end runs, some blocking out there, putting the quarterback at safety on defense, so you have those single platoon systems, so you want to protect your quarterback, you play safety. The forward pass he's known as the father of the forward pass because he would, from 1903 through 1906, when it was adopted by rule, he would be writing Walter Camp and just about every other member of the Rules Committee. His public outcry of the brutality was on the rise until, of course, the forward pass was legalized in 1906, along with other changes from President Teddy Roosevelt's somewhat ultimatum to get them to change the game to make it a little bit safer. He had an impact on it because that rule written in 1906 was almost word for word what Heisman's suggestions were in all those writings he would send to the Rules Committee. So definitely made an impact there. He ended up serving on some future committees after them to help adapt it, from taking from the eastern schools of Yale and Harvard and Princeton and Penn and shifting it so it was more of a countrywide decisions on how to reform the game, which Walter Camp and John C. Bell and others sat in on afterwards. Now, he also invented the Heisman shift and a hidden ball play where they would sort of hide the ball under a shirt, which today's rules make it totally illegal. But when you're playing within the rules, you got to play that fine line of what's legal and gaining an advantage. Now, some sports historians also credit John Heisman with introducing the I formation and from existing photographic evidence while at Georgia Tech when he was a coach there. Other people say that, no, it might have been the I formation was Pop Warner or somebody else. But there's photographic evidence that shows that John Heisman was running it at Georgia Tech prior to those claims of other individuals that have been said to have made that great formation. Now, it's impossible for the veteran coach to stay away from sports after he retired. So John became one of the organizers of the first athletic director of the Downtown Athletic Club in New York City. An award for excellence to America's top college football player east of the Mississippi River, which ended up bearing John Heisman's name, was proposed by William Prince, the Downtown Athletic Club, in 1935. Now, Heisman initially rejected the idea. As a matter of fact, the first trophy that was handed out, that's today known as the Heisman, in 1935, was known as the Downtown Athletic Club Trophy, and it was handed to Chicago's Jay Berwanger, and we've talked about him in recent posts, where he was also the first Heisman winner, but also the first man drafted in the NFL, even though he never played it down in the NFL. But he received his trophy, said Downtown Athletic Club Trophy. 1936, it was changed to the Heisman Trophy Award, and has been that ever since, so almost 100 years of having the Heisman Award, and it's very prestigious indeed for those who win that. College players strive to get that award more than any other because it gets the highest profile. So we want you to know this man has great Western Pennsylvania connection to the game of football. He learned to play the game here. He enjoyed playing the game here and took it with him to a bunch of other places that he went and helped make football what it is today. So we hope you enjoyed this little bit of history, and hope you'll join us each and every day for some more great football history here on Pigskin Dispatch. Till tomorrow, everybody, have a great Gridiron Day. That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.